of magic again. Because I was thinking, like, so I've talked about magic, but Tolkien has a kind of complicated take on magic. And is magic real? We might ask. I mean, it's not. On the short, this is the short answer. There's no such thing as magic. But what is real is, I'm gonna look at my notes here. The human desire to dominate and control. And what magic represents in Tolkien's world is different than like, because like so let's make a distinction here. There's magic, which is going to be kind of bad in the general sense, and then we have like elvish power, because when we didn't read this part, but like in the previous book, which was the first part of Lord of the Rings, they go to the elvish kingdom of Galadriel, who's an elf, and she's this powerful elf. She actually has one of the rings, and one of the rings of power, and she gets them to look into her pool. This is kind of like a little water. And when the water kind of comes down, like she gets Frodo to look into it, and you can kind of see the future in a certain sense. You have this capacity to see things, and then Sam looks into it. So there's like these magic things. So the Mirror of Galadriel is one of these things. You're going to see like the elven rope is going to be kind of magical in quotes, because Tolkien has called this magic, and the elven cloak and the elven lembas bread are these things which have more than normal power, and with the elven rope, they're gonna like they tie it to this rock, and then they climb down, and then they're like, how are we gonna get the rope down? Like, we need this rope, and plus Gollum's Hollow, I guess he's gonna be able to use it, and I think it's Sam where Frodo says Namarie, which is an Elvish word, I forget what it means, and the rope comes down, and then this becomes this joke where Frodo says, I guess you didn't tie it very well, Sam. He says, no, I tied it super tight. I'm an expert rope tire. And so the rest, this was like a magic rope, like it's an Elvish rope, or the cloak, like they put the cloak on, and like, I don't know if you've seen like the Harry Potter movies, but like there's like the invisibility cloak, where you sort of put it on and all of a sudden you're invisible. And so when like they're getting hunted by the orcs and they sort of put the elven cloak over them, they become essentially invisible. Now they don't literally become invisible, but they just kind of blend in perfectly, like a chameleon, so to speak, like those little lizards, like they blend in completely with their surroundings, which is a good example of what it means for the elves to do it. It's not that they're like controlling nature. What is it? It's that they take what is in nature and use it like a chameleon. So a chameleon is not magic, but a chameleon has the capacity to become invisible. Or like certain insects or fish, they kind of like just stop moving, then you can't see it anymore because it like blends in perfectly. Like the walking stick, there's certain animals that have that capacity. So that's what elvish power is. It's more like taking a kind of virtue within nature itself, inherent to nature, and then using it. And this contrasts with the magic, which Sauron and Saruman, so the bad guys are the guys who use what Tolkien calls magic. So when Galadriel is talking to the hobbits and like, hey, is that a magic pool? And she's like, magic? Why do you call it magic? It's just what I use. Like for the elves, it's not like a special power. And she's like, well, if you mean magic, like that's what Sauron is. That's what the bad guys do. Because what the bad guys do is what they have a desire to dominate and control, and usually control nature. And so this is a bad thing because it's not respecting the kind of virtues and nature. Kind of like, is this what my iPhone is? Is this like representation of magic for Tolkien? I think it kind of is. I mean, like, because not that this is evil, although he might think it's evil actually, but that the way I use this can be this kind of similar Sauron type desire to dominate and control, and in a way, be controlled by those people in Silicon Valley who are designing these things and making tons of money off the fact that I keep touching this stupid thing and like clicking on things, and they're like, what are the most powerful companies in the world today? Amazon, Google, Apple. It's no coincidence that those companies are the ones that use technology and they get us to use their technologies. Now they're not evil. I like Google, I use it, but I think Tolkien. I think I have to be very careful how I use this, otherwise it'll manipulate me instead of me manipulating it. And Tolkien would say, like, yeah, we more of us get used by this thing than actually us using it. Where this technology is, it's this desire to dominate, and then actually ends up hurting us and messing up our balance with nature. Like this is more like in balance with nature, the elvish power. And so we're gonna see some more magic sort of moments. And let's look at one which is going to be the Palantir. Now, it's funny. Palantir, I think, is actually the name of a company today in Silicon Valley, which is kind of ironic, that makes some kind of apps. But the Palantir that's in Tolkien is the Seeing Stone. So it's one of these it's not like it's evil, but when it is very much like the iPhone or the smartphone, where you want to look into it, see things that you probably don't need to see, and like it's just fostering your desire for control, and it's fostering your desire to manipulate others and control others, and which is not good. I mean, that's sort of evil. And so let's look at these scenes from the Palantir chapter, which is where the Palantir is thrown down at Gandalf, because Gandalf's kind of like yelling at Saruman, who's in the tower, and they're like, well, how come this Palantir got thrown down? So it's very valuable, it's very powerful. But apparently they think that Wormtongue threw it down by accident, or Wormtongue had it not by accident, but he didn't think that this was stupid to throw this thing down, but it was. So, and so Pippin gets it, and Pippin picks it up and prevented it from rolling away and getting lost, and he stopped it, and then Pippin said, "Here, I'll take that, my lad. That's all." That's what Gandalf said. "I wonder what it is. It felt so very heavy." Pippin's voice fell very low, as if he was talking to himself. He's getting tempted here. "Hello," said Merry. "So that's what is bothering you. Now, Pippin, my lad, don't forget Gildor's saying, the one Sam used to quote, "Don't meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger." And so Mary saw him like, don't try to look into that thing. But Pippin, it's kind of like once you've had a taste of like a drug, like just one little hit, and you're like, whoa, that's amazing. And then then it's gone. And you're like, I want that. And then you go and get it. And so Pippin, it's like this drug, or like your iPhone, like, I want that. Like you've got this addiction to it. And he's gonna go get it. And he can't stop. So he gets up in the middle of the night and he sneaks over to where Gandalf's kind of sleeping over. And the film is a really good version of this, sort of like, so kind of like, he's really sneaky, kind of like, when I was a kid, I'd sneak out at night to like watch R-rated movies like downstairs. Oh yeah, here's my chance. And so he's down there, and let's look at the scene quickly. Now he drew off the cloth, wrapped the stone in it, and kneeled it down, laid it back in the wizard's hand. Then at last he looked at the thing that he had uncovered. There it was, a smooth globe of crystal. Now dark and dead, lying bare before his knees, Pippin lifted it, covered it hurriedly with his own cloak, and half turned to go back to his bed. At that moment, Gandalf moved in his sleep, etc. So he gets it, and he can't stop looking at it. Does it sound familiar? Think about your screens. And he drew his cloak aside and gazed at it. The air seemed still and tense about him. At first, the globe was dark, black as jet, with the moonlight gleaming on its surface. Then there came a faint glow and stir in the heart of it, and it held his eyes, so that now he could not look away. Soon all the inside seemed on fire. The ball was spinning, or the lights within were revolving. Suddenly the lights went out. He gave a gasp and struggled, but he remained bent, clasping the ball with both hands. Closer and closer he bent, and then became rigid. His lips moved soundlessly for a while, and then with a strangled cry, he fell back and lay still. The cry was piercing. The guards leapt down in the banks, and the camp was stirred. So he looks at it, something happens, he's like talking to it or something, and then he passes out. He's like knocked out. So and so there's a lot here. How much time do we have? So let me just hit the crucial point, which is what happened. And well, basically what happens is he's got the Palantir, which is like a portal into this world where you can communicate with other Palantirs. Who's on the other end of this Palantir? Sauron, the big bad guy in Mordor. Sauron thinks that Saruman still has the Palantir, so he starts talking, "Hey Saruman," but it's Pippin. And then Sauron sees, oh, it's a hobbit. So he thinks that the hobbit is in the prison of Saruman. Now I got this hobbit because Sauron's going to give me the hobbit. So Pippin's lucky that nothing happens. Let's look at what he saw. He sees the Nazgul, which are the Black Riders. And then he says, I tried to get away because I thought it would fly out, but then when it had covered all the globe, it disappeared. Then he came. He did not speak so that I could hear his words. He just looked and I understood. So you have come back. Why have you neglected to report for so long? I did not answer, he said. Who are you? I still did not answer, but it hurt me horribly. He pressed me. So I said, a hobbit. Then suddenly he seemed to see me. and he laughed at me. It was cruel. It was like being stabbed with knives. I struggled. But he said, wait a moment. We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that. Then he gloated over me. I felt I was falling to pieces. No, I can't say anymore. I don't remember anything else. Look at me, said Gandalf. Pippin looked him up straight into his eyes. The wizard held his gaze for a moment in silence. Then his face grew gentler, and the shadow of a smile appeared. He laid his hand softly on Pippin's head. All right, he said. Say no more. You have taken no harm. So, even though the Dark Lord is this really powerful kind of evil angel, looked into Pippin's eyes and like kind of like held him and like punished him for his instance. Like he felt like he was getting stabbed by knives. He didn't attack him because he didn't think he had to. He thought like, oh, I'm going to be able to capture this hobbit later because Saruman's going to send him to me. So he lets him go. And when you meet the Dark Lord, it's kind of like the ring. It's kind of like this taste of power. It's kind of like this taste of a drug. And he could have turned towards evil. I mean, think about like Star Wars, like the dark side. When what's the guy's name? Kylo Ren's like trying to turn people to the dark side, or Darth Vader's trying to turn Luke to the dark side. Feel the power of the dark side. It's kind of feel your anger. And it's kind of similar to that. Sorry. I love Lord of the Rings. I love Star Wars. So so good. And so I want to look at this. Let's look at this. Then the Palantir is there. Gandalf's got the Palantir. He's like, okay, we gotta get this thing safe because it's dangerous, it's powerful and dangerous. And he's like, hey, do you want it, Aragorn? Aragorn's the returning king who hasn't really claimed his kingship yet. And there's an interesting exchange here where Gandalf says, will you, Aragorn, take the Orthanc stone and guard it? It is a dangerous charge. Dangerous indeed, but not to all, said Aragorn. There's one who may claim it by right, for this assuredly is the Palantir of Orthanc from the treasury of Elendil, set here by the kings of Gondor. Now my hour draws near. I will take it. So what's going on here? And Gandalf looked at Aragorn, and then, to his surprise of the others, he lifted the covered stone and bowed as he presented it. Receive it, Lord, he said, in earnest of other things that shall be given back. But if I may counsel you in the use of your own, do not use it yet. Be wary. When have I been hasty or unwary, who have waited and prepared for so many long years? Never yet. Do not then stumble at the end of the road. And so what does happen here is you have this returning king. And this is an interesting, and I don't know what to make of this. He has authority. He has rights, and he has the right to this Palantir. And so it's kind of this weird moment, like where Gandalf, who's like a super powerful and important guy, and he bows and says, "Here's," and he calls him Lord. "Here, Lord, here, this is yours. You own this." And so Aragorn claims it. And we've seen this before, where Aragorn is claiming authority. When he ran into the men of Rohan, and they're like, "Who are you?" And he like throws back his cloak and he throws out his sword and he says, "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elisar." And then he mentions all his like heritage of kingship. And they're like, "Whoa, who is this guy?" And or when he's in the battle and he's standing on top of the wall facing the bad guys, and he says, "Depart, or I shall kill all of you. Like you're all gonna die. Like I'm the one in authority here." And they're like, "Whoa!" And they like see like this guy's got authority, and so now here he's got this right, and we don't have kings, so we don't have a rightful king. At least I don't know if you're from a country with a king. But is authority real? Or is it like this imaginary thing that kings use to manipulate the poor people into like obeying them? And then we came up with democracy, like forget the king, we're in a democracy, we're gonna choose who's gonna rule us. We're gonna have free elections. I mean, we do have free elections.
When you talk about kings or whatnot, especially if you're talking about the English kings, they claimed authority by divine right. They were chosen by God. I'm a
Right.
major. That seems to be the case for most people that wanted to rule in some kind of a monarchy. But I don't really know. I don't really think much of that was actually applied to Tolkien's works. His was more mystical and magical.
Right, and I don't think Tolkien is referring, well, to the English king or queen. Like I don't think he has that much regard for them, but more just the concept, I guess. And Tolkien's thinking more about the Middle Ages when there were kings who kind of had kings and queens with authority. Although, like I said, like this is kind of like a throwback. Like people call this meta modern because it's modern, but it still has these kind of old traditional values in some of it, like kingship, and like the desire of a return of a king. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll wrestle with this as we go. At least I will in front of you, and hopefully make some sense of it. But it is kind of hard to make sense of all this kingship stuff. Okay, so we have this scene, and then things settle down. Pippin's not going to look at the Orthodox stone anymore, so that's good. So then we get into the next chapter, and we're going to see more of this magic stuff. We're going to see. Now we're going to see Frodo. So like this is like the main character. I mean, there's more than one main character, but he's like maybe the main character in this story. He's got the ring. He's the ring bearer. He's carrying it to its destruction. He's got the main mission. It's like the mission of all missions. And it's like the hardest mission because, imagine going into your enemy's territory and like, I don't know, who's our enemy. It's hard to talk about. Like, but the thing about like during like World War II, like Hitler, like okay, like there's an easy guy like to sort of hate. You've got Hitler. He's clearly an evil mastermind, able to like kill millions of people. So you're going like into Hitler's like backyard, and you're trying to like sneak in there, even though you know he's trying to kill you, because that's where you need to go to destroy this powerful item. And by the way, if Hitler gets a hold of that powerful item, he'll be able to take over the whole world because it'll be like his clinching powerful item that's gonna give him that power. So it's just kind of like seems like a foolish errand. And so I guess let's talk about that for a second, which is there hope? Or is this a fool's errand? And many people in this story call it a fool's errand. Boromir had, at the beginning of our story, and said, like, it's foolishness to go into Mordor. You're just gonna like give it to the bad guys. Let's use it against him. Or other people, even Sam sometimes says, like, are you sure we need to do this? Like, can't we just like hide it here? Maybe we can hide it in Galadriel's kingdom with the elves, and we can hide it with another character called Tom Bombadil, who's kind of like an elvish type character, or a sort of angelic character. in the previous book. But no, they can't hide it. They've got to go into the backyard of the enemy and try to sneak in there. And one of the advantages is that when you're Sauron, you're kind of a man, or a man, he's a spiritual being who wants power. And so you think everybody wants power and is going to use power. And so he's not even thinking, there's no way these little hobbits are going to like try to attack me. That's like ridiculous. It's like, imagine sending children to like attack Hitler or something. So trying to send like you and me, like a couple of little guys, like with no weapons or something, into Hitler's realm or Putin's realm, if you want to think of a modern guy. You know, Putin doesn't mess around. Like when people like mess with him, they die. Like he does not. He's held on to power because he knows how to hold on to power. So this is like Sauron, and is there hope? So actually, let me see. Do I have that marked here? I think let me turn to that chapter. I'm not seeing it right now. Let's go to the bravery of Sam. See here. Oh, so they're going into the Dark Lord's realm. It's just Sam and Frodo at this point. They're gonna find Smeagol in a minute. This chapter is called The Taming of Smeagol. So we're gonna see Taming of Smeagol. Smeagol is Gollum. And in this scene, we see them having to climb down this cliff, and they're little guys. They're like, but essentially 3 feet tall. Like they're about that tall. And so it's hard. And they're climbing down, and Frodo's saying, I'm going to try and climb down this thing. Very good, said Sam gloomily, but I'm going first. You, said Frodo, what's made you change your mind about climbing? I haven't changed my mind, but it's only sense. Put the one lowest as is most likely to slip. I don't want to come down on top of you and knock you off. No sense in killing two with one fall. But before Frodo could stop him, he sat down, swung his legs over the brink, and twisted around, scrabbling with his toes for a foothold. It is doubtful if he ever did anything braver in cold blood, or more unwise. No, Sam, you old ass, said Frodo. You'll kill yourself for certain, going over it like that without even a look to see what to make it for. Come back. He took Sam under the armpits and hauled him up again. Now wait a bit and be patient, he said. Then he lay on the ground, leaning out and looking down, but the light seemed to be fading quickly, although the sun had not yet set. I think we could manage this, he said presently. I could at any rate, and you could too if you kept your head and followed me carefully. And so what I wanted to show here was they have a mission, and they got to go down this cliff, and Sam's like, I can't go down that cliff. I'm going to kill myself. And Frodo's like, we have no choice. We've got to do it. So what do? You do it. That's bravery. And like, do you ever face moments in your life where you're like, if I try that, I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to get killed. Like if I try to like attain that goal or get that job or, whatever, I'm going to get hurt. But you have to. And you go. And I mean, many of us have relatives who had to leave their homeland, and like they didn't have it easy. They had to cross like deserts or like seas or and they're like, well, I have to. I have no choice. And and so there's this hope in just the fact that you have to. And I don't know, have you guys watched that series? It's the one where it's not the dynasty, it's like when they're handing over the wealth. You know what I'm talking about? It was like really big this past year. Not dynasty, but
Succession.
Succession. Yeah. So you've seen Succession?
Just like started.
Okay.
I'm ready season 2.
So I don't know, and I have only watched a little bit of Succession. It's called Succession, right?
Yeah.
But you have the dad who like amassed all this billions of dollars of wealth, and now he's passing it on the businesses to his children. And what does he keep saying to his children? Because they kind of grew up rich, so they didn't have to grow up like in a tough world. So they had like everything handed to them on a silver platter. They went to this great college and they have all these nice cars. You're not serious people. You know, when he says that, we're basically like, you never had to, really work hard just to survive. You had everything handed to you. Like I'm serious because like I had to like work my ass off in order to attain this achievement, but you had everything handed to you, so you can't do this. And he's handed, and so in a certain sense, these are serious people like Frodo and Sam, even though they're like, weak and little people, like they're serious people. Like they're gonna do this. They're not backing down. And so that's what's powerful in the world. I mean, I think that's what Tolkien is saying, is serious people, serious, not necessarily powerful. In fact, many times they're the weakest people. And this is one of their advantages. The fact that they are the weakest people in this entire story is an advantage. Why? Because Sauron would never expect them to do this. And I don't know, like, if it's kind of like the David and Goliath story, where in the Bible, Goliath is like this huge soldier for the Philistines, and he's got swords and all kinds of armor. And this little guy, David, comes up there. He's got no armor on, and he's got like some stones. He's got a sling, and Goliath's like, "Ha! What's this little Jewish guy gonna do to me? Like, I'm way more powerful. I'm gonna kill you. Like, I'm gonna like feed you to the dogs. I'm gonna feed your body to the dogs." And David's like, "Okay." And he picks up a stone and he slings it and hits the guy right in the head and kills him like that. And wins the battle. And he comes over and grabs the guy's sword and cuts off his head. And so the little guy has this advantage of not being expected to do anything. Right. Right. Yeah, he can't even imagine, Sauron can't even imagine that these people have pose any threat to him. He's concerned more about like Gandalf. He's concerned about Aragorn. He's concerned about like people with power. But people who don't have power, like what can they do? Okay, so then the other thing that the hobbits are, and they do, is they do pity, which is another thing that Sauron doesn't even think exists. Pity in the sense of they respect nature, they respect living things, even bad living things. This is kind of like an anti-capital punishment story where they capture Gollum. So Gollum has been following them, this little, like, what's Gollum? Gollum is like a hobbit who was addicted to the ring for like 1,000 years and just like loved the rings. So just imagine someone like just kind of addicted, like just like taking drugs and watching this being like continually for 1,000 years. And he's like shriveled up into this little guy, even littler than he was before. And you've seen images of him probably in the movies. So now he's there, and in a way, he's an image of what? Of what you and I could become if we get addicted to the ring too, to the ring of power. And of what Frodo can happen to him, because Frodo is starting to get addicted to the ring because he's got the ring around his neck. He's got a chain, and around the chain here, he's got like a little ring on it, which is the ring of power. And so in this scene, they're like, they capture Gollum, and they're thinking like, let's kill him. This guy's like dangerous. He's evil. And so they got him, and he's Gollum. I'm afraid. But that would kill us, whimpered Gollum. Cruel little hobbitses. Oh, I should do it with the Gollum voice. Should I do it? I'll try. I can't do like the movie Gollum voice, but I'll just do like that. Whimpered Gollum. Hiding something the cold hard lands and he was Gollum. Sobbed Frodo from his godly throat. No, said Frodo. If we kill him, we must kill him outright. But we can't do that, not as things are. Poor wretch. He has done us no harm. Oh, hasn't he? Said Sam, rubbing his shoulder. Anyway, he meant to, and he means to, I'll warrant. Well, said Arthur, that's his plan. I dare say, said Frodo, but what he means to do is another matter. He paused for a while and thought. Gollum lay still, but stopped whimpering. Sam stood glowering over him. It seemed to Frodo then that he heard quite plainly, but far off, voices out of the past. What a pity Bilbo did not stab the vile creature when he had a chance. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. I do not feel any pity for Gollum. He deserves death. Deserves death? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some die that deserve life. Can you give that to them? Then be not too eager to deal out death in the name of justice, fearing for your own safety. Even the wise cannot see all ends. So what's happening is he's having a flashback to a conversation that Frodo had with Gandalf. So I'm using Gandalf. There's a Gandalf's voice. So Gandalf was telling him, pity was what prevented Bilbo, the other hobbit, who's Frodo's uncle, from killing Gollum. And then Frodo was saying in the past, like, we should kill him because he deserves death. I mean, this guy tried to kill me. And Gandalf was saying, no, don't kill him. I mean, even the wise cannot see all that. Like, we shouldn't just easily just kill people, because this person could be still good. And so Frodo now says, very well, he answered aloud, lowering his sword, because he had a sword kind of ready to kill Gollum. But still I am afraid, and yet, as you see, I will not touch the creature. For now that I see him, I do pity him. Sam stared at his master, who seemed to be speaking to someone who was not there. Gollum lifted his head. Yes, wretched ye are, precious, he whined. Misery, misery! Hobbits won't kill us, nice hobbits. No, we won't, said Frodo. But we won't let you go either. You are full of wickedness and mischief, Gollum. You will have to come with us, that's all, while we keep an eye on you. But you must help us if you can. One good turn deserves another. And so forth. So he enlists Gollum to help them. And in fact, so now this is a good thing, because Gollum, among all beings in the world, is one who has actually gone into Mordor, into the Dark Lord's lands. So he knows how to go there. So like, okay, you've been there, because the Dark Lord actually captured Gollum at one point, and tortured him, because he was trying to torture him to sort of find out where the ring was. So Gollum knows where to go. So he gets him to go. And yeah. And yet, is Gollum trustworthy? Actually, yeah, I don't know if you guys said would you trust this guy? This is a guy who was addicted to the ring for like 1,000 years. He wants it back. The ring is now in Frodo's possession, which he calls the precious.
It depends on which Gollum you're talking to, because there's the manifestation of the ring's corruption of Gollum, like his worst personality traits that manifested into its own personality, which caused him to essentially have two personalities. And then there's Schmeagol, which is like the whimpering, always scared, terrified Gollum.
Excellent, right? Yeah. So you're saying correctly that Gollum has kind of two personalities, and he's one person that you call sort of personality disorder or schizophrenia, and he even talks to himself. Should we look at that scene? Let me see if we have time. Yeah. Well, wait, let me just finish that. Then I want to look at. I found a hope scene here. So, but yeah, what B is saying is that there is the scene, and there's a great depiction of it in the film, but it's also here in the book, where Gollum is kind of like talking to himself, and he doesn't realize that Sam's listening to him, and so he's like, on the one hand, like, well, the hobbits are nice to us. Maybe I should help them. Kill them. They stole it from us. But good master, he's nice to me. No, he's not. He just wants to use you. And you sort of see him going back and forth, talking to him to them. And you're like, which one's going to come out? Like we were saying. And this can happen, I suppose. It literally happens to people with a mental illness where they're kind of having multiple personalities. But it can happen to us, or it can happen to anybody, where you're like, yeah, what should I do? Do I serve myself? Do I sacrifice myself for this other person? What about me? What about my rights? Like you sort of like weigh this out, and you see this traumatized in Gollum, and so, but they trust him. At least Frodo's trusting. Sam is not going to trust him very much. But let's look at the scene of Frodo's courage. This is the next chapter. It's called The Passage of the Marshes. And they go through this other magic sort of thing, which are the dead marshes. And let's just put that on the sheet for a second. So what the heck are the dead marshes? And in a nutshell, it's a place where there was a battle before. And I guess one of the things to think about here is Tolkien. So Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, was a soldier in World War I. And here's what happened. So he was in college, he was at Oxford College, and he had a bunch of friends who were all writers and artists. So they would meet and they would write poems and write stories. And like that's why I started writing these stories. And then they all go off to war. And one by one, his friends died. So in these battles in France, they were in France, because Germany was attacking France. They were, and they had bombs and they had guns, this is machine guns, and they had poison gas, and they were killing each other. And so like one friend died in one battle, and then another friend got injured and then died in another battle, and then another friend died in another battle. And he's hearing about all his friends dying. And then Tolkien is in one of these trenches, which is like a hole, and they're like in these holes because they like shoot at the other guys over there and kind of get down the hole. But then there's like this disease and stuff in the hole, so he gets this trench fever. So he's sick and he can't fight anymore. So they send him back to England. So that's what saved Tolkien's life, was the fact that he got sick. So Tolkien's back in England, and that's when he starts writing these stories. Because think about it, like if you had PTSD from battle and all your friends got killed, and in fact, all of his friends except one got killed in these battles. And his name was Chris Weisman. So they got together, they sort of like rebuilt their fellowship, but they realized like most of their friends had died. And Tolkien's therapy was what? It wasn't going to a therapist, it was writing stories about war. And so when you see these battle scenes and bombs and technology of death, that's Tolkien's life. He experienced that firsthand. So when we have a marsh with all these dead bodies there, it's kind of magical in the sense that, like, obviously, when people die, they just rot, like their bodies just rot and they just become soil. But is a battlefield changed by the fact that thousands of men died there? Like if you go to, or a cemetery, if you go to a place where a lot of people are dead, or a lot of people were killed there, like 9/11, I don't know if you've been to like the 9/11 site, like what, 3,000 people died on that spot, like 20 years ago, or whatever. Like, is that like, is there something sacred about that space?
No, not really.
If you know about it, right? Obviously, and like I suppose, like there's probably there might have been people who killed here. We don't know about them like thousands of years ago, but I mean, obviously the soil is just dirt. But there's something, for lack of a better term, sacred about a place where many people were killed. Like that's like a damage to the universe in a certain sense. Where evil happens, like the Holocaust, like if you go to like a place where the Holocaust happened, like we should not forget that place. Like we need to remember that place.
I guess it could kind of be like Gettysburg, where it's haunted. They see soldiers walking and things like that. I mean, it's not a sacred place, but it's definitely remembered.
Yeah, I mean, I think sacred, depending on which view, I would use the word sacred. I mean, in a sense, yeah, that's a place where many people died and died heroically, and some of them, that a lot of evil happened there, a lot of evil violence. That
Sacrilege is probably closer to. It's not so much sacred, it's just sacrilegious to like go there and just disrespect it, because not necessarily because a lot of people died there, it's how they died.
right. Good. Be pointing out. Certainly, it would be sacrilegious to like mistreat the place, like just piss on it or like throw garbage there or something. No, that would be like evil to do that. That'd be sacrilegious. Yeah. So there's something, and I don't know, it's hard to describe about that, but this is what Tolkien is seeing when he's having these guys walk over this former battlefield. And like Frodo's like, oh, there's dead bodies, or this kind of like ghosts to dead bodies, kind of like he was saying at Gettysburg. I don't know if I don't really believe in ghosts personally, but maybe there's ghosts there, or maybe people are seeing something. But let's see this scene where, and actually this is the next chapter, but I'm going to jump there anyway, where we see Frodo and their hope, and they're discussing hope. And this is, we haven't necessarily covered this yet. This is we're reading this week, where the Black Gate is closed. Is the name of the chapter. They get into the gate, and Smeagol is leading them. Then, what the plague did you bring us here for? Said Sam. So they get to the gate, and the gate's closed, and like it's like this is kind of hopeless. Like we've arrived at the gate of Mordor, but we can't get in. Master said so. Master says, bring us to the gate. So good Smeagol does so. Master said, so wise master. I did, said Frodo. His face was grim and set, but resolute. He was filthy, haggard, and pinched with weariness. But he cowered no longer, and his eyes were clear. I said so, because I purpose to enter Mordor, and I know no other way. Therefore I shall go this way. I do not ask anyone to go with me. No, master, wailed Gollum, pawing at him, seeming in great distress. No use that way, no use. Don't take the precious to him. He'll eat us all if he gets it. Eat all the world. Keep it nice, master, and be kind to Smeagol. Don't let him have it, or go away. Go to nice places and give it back to little Smeagol. Yes, yes, master, give it back, eh? Smeagol will keep it safe. He will do lots of good, especially to nice hobbits. Hobbits go home. Don't go to the gate. I am commanded to go to the land of Mordor, and therefore I shall go, said Frodo. If there's only one way, then I must take it. What comes after must come. And so, is this hope? Well, read this chapter. Sam said nothing. The look on Frodo's face was enough for him. He knew that the words of his were useless. And after all, he never had any real hope in the affair from the beginning. But being a cheerful hobbit, he had not needed hope, as long as despair could be postponed. Now they were come to the bitter end. But he had stuck to his master all the way. That was what he had chiefly come for, and he would still stick with him. His master would not go to Mordor alone. Sam would go with him, and at any rate, they would get rid of Gollum. And so Sam thought there never had been any real hope in the affair from the beginning. Like, you're going to go into Mordor, to the most powerful place of the most evil person in the world, and try and destroy this thing there, and you're like a little guy with no like big sword and no big army and no like anything. This is hopeless. This is stupid. And is it hopeless to try to bring justice to the world, to try to stop evil in the world, to try to, as a little person, take on big people with a lot more power, a lot more money and technology? And should we just give up? Should we just go back to the Hobbit's realm of Shire, try to hide? Or do we march into Mordor? And I don't know, I get kind of goosebumps like when you read Frodo and you sort of see like this is a hopeless thing, and they're like going into like the Dark Lord's like main gate, and he's like, his face was grim and set but resolute. He was filthy, haggard, and pinched with weariness. So he's like tired. And he's like, ugh. But he cowered no longer, and his eyes were clear. I said so, because I purpose to enter Mordor, and I know no other way. Therefore I shall go this way. I do not ask anyone to go with me. So he would go alone. Yeah. Look, this is a suicide mission, but I'm going. This is the only thing I can do. This is what my mission is. And so, yeah, is this, and you know, we're not on a mission to destroy the ring, but in a certain sense, all of us have our rings that we have to destroy in some sense, don't we? Where, yeah, do we have a mission? I mean, maybe you're on a mission, I don't know. But all of us have something we should do. Or sometimes there's like something you're called to, like somebody's in need, or you're just like a homeless person, or someone in your family, or something happens to our society, and we're like, someone's got to do something about that. Well, what about you and me? Oh, someone else will do it. Well, that doesn't work at the end of the day. And so I think I'm trying to get inspired by this story. And I would encourage you to think about these stories as ways to think about your own story. Because one of the things that storytelling does is it helps us reflect on our own story. And am I in a story? Are you in a story? With a beginning, middle, and an end? Well, we had a beginning, we're kind of in the middle, and we're gonna have an end. Everyone's gonna die, just so you know. I don't want to like shock you, but like this is a fact. And so, in a certain sense, just that fact gives us a kind of urgency, like, do something. Like, we only have so much time on this earth. And so you can kind of like sit back and enjoy yourself and serve yourself and like use your technology like the ring and kind of like become addicted to stuff. Or you can kind of like say like, I will go. I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I'm gonna go. And so yeah, so that's what these stories are about. And so yeah, hopefully we can gain some insight from Sullivan.